In the late 1990s, I supervised a crew that handled trauma scene cleanup. Our job was to go into buildings after things like homicides, suicides, unattended deaths, fires, or any other tragic event that happened inside a home. One case has always stayed with me. One afternoon, we were dispatched to a small house on the outskirts of Bristol, England. The report we received was vague, simply saying, "Death inside residence." That was pretty normal for our line of work. When we arrived, the house looked like a typical single-story home from the 1950s. The garage door was open, and an elderly woman sat inside on a folding chair, smoking a cigarette. Her name was Margaret. I introduced myself and told her we were there to help clean up and take care of whatever needed to be done. She looked extremely nervous. What caught my attention was that the garage was filled with her belongings: an old couch, a small television, boxes of clothes. It looked like she had moved everything out of the house. I gently asked if she could show me where the incident had happened. She shook her head immediately. "I'm not going back in that house," she said. Then she pointed toward the front bedroom window. "It happened in there." I asked if there was anything in the room she wanted us to save before we began working. She stared at the house for a moment and said quietly, "I don't care about anything in there." Then she told me something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "My son died in that room," she said. I offered my condolences, but she shook her head again. "You don't understand," she continued. "A year ago, my other son died in that house too, and before that, my husband." According to her, they had all taken their own lives inside the same home. But Margaret didn't believe they had done it willingly. "There's something in that house," she whispered. "Something evil." In my line of work, you see a lot of grief, and sometimes you see mental illness. But this woman didn't seem delusional. She seemed genuinely terrified. I asked if she wanted me to call someone for her, but she said a relative was coming to pick her up soon. Before we went inside, I asked her to sign the paperwork allowing us to begin. She barely glanced at it. "You could burn the whole place down for all I care," she said. My crew suited up and we entered the house. The bedroom was small, with faded blue walls. It was a little messy, but nothing unusual, until we saw the bed. At the foot of it was a dark pool of dried blood. There were stains on the mattress and vomit on the sheets. But what really stopped us was the wall. One entire wall had writing smeared across it in blood. We couldn't fully make out the words. Some looked like letters, others like random marks. It barely resembled English. Later, we learned from a neighbor what had happened. Margaret's adult son had swallowed a strong acid and then cut his own throat while sitting on the bed. We removed the carpet, sealed the mattress, and cleaned every trace of the scene. But something about that house felt wrong the entire time. The air inside felt heavy, almost suffocating. The smell wasn't just stale, it was thick, sour, and foul in a way I can't properly describe. None of us said it out loud while we were working, but every single one of us felt the same thing. We wanted to get out of that house as fast as possible. Before that day, I never really believed a place could hold something dark or evil. But the way Margaret was too afraid to step inside, the way that house had taken her husband and both her sons, even now, years later, I can still remember the feeling inside those walls. I've always been a skeptical person, and I'm not religious. I was raised in a household with a mix of light religious influences, but both my parents are scientists, and I work as a lawyer supporting scientific research. I'm open-minded and accept that there may be more to reality than what we typically perceive, but I've never seriously entertained paranormal ideas until this happened. Back in 2005, my girlfriend at the time, Lena, and I drove out to a rural area in northern Vermont, near a small town called Maple Ridge. Her grandparents had lived there for decades. Her grandfather had passed years earlier, and her grandmother had recently died. Lena wanted to visit the house one last time before it was sold, since it held so many childhood memories for her. The house sat in a remote area, surrounded by dense forest. The nearest neighbor, a local ranger, lived about half a mile away. From the moment we arrived, something felt off. I've been in old houses before, even owned one, but this was different. Even Lena said it didn't feel like the home she remembered. We got there in the early evening and checked everything, inside the house and around the property. The basement was massive, well lit, but full of small rooms connected by narrow hallways. It had a strange, unsettling atmosphere. I tried to brush it off. Some basements just feel like that. After a few hours, the unease didn't go away. So, we decided to sleep in the living room, the only place that felt somewhat tolerable. Even then, there was a constant feeling of being watched. The hairs on my arms and neck wouldn't stop standing up. Then we heard it. Footsteps, followed by a loud thump, and the sound of something being dragged. Then again, thump, drag, thump, drag. We checked the entire house. Nothing. We tried to rationalize it. Old houses make noise. To distract ourselves, we put on a comedy movie. Halfway through the movie, the shutters slammed shut. We told ourselves it was the wind, even though they had been latched open. And it wasn't even that windy. Then the rocking chair started moving, slowly, back and forth. Draft, we said. Then suddenly, a piercing alarm went off from the basement. We had no choice but to go down and shut it off. It turned out to be the sump pump alarm, but the pump was completely dry. While we were down there, the basement lights suddenly went out. The lights upstairs stayed on. Walking through that basement in the dark was the most terrified I've ever been in my life, and I've been held at gunpoint before. There was no cell signal, so we used the landline to call the ranger. We asked about the alarm. He said he'd check it in the morning. We also asked if it was windy where he was. It wasn't. Then again, thump, drag, thump, drag. At that point, every instinct in my body was screaming, "Get out!" We didn't hesitate anymore. We grabbed our things and ran to the car, an SUV. We sped down the dirt road, trying to put as much distance between us and that house as possible. I was in the passenger seat. That's when I saw it. Something large lunged toward my side of the car. All I caught was a glimpse, yellowish eyes and a body shaped vaguely like a dog. It slammed into the passenger door hard. When we finally stopped at a hotel in Riverbend City, we saw streaks of mud and saliva across the door and window. It could have been a wolf or a coyote. Those lived in the area. But what kind of animal throws itself at a moving vehicle? I even took a picture, but it was on film, and I have no idea where it is now. To this day, this remains the creepiest experience of my life. I could have explained everything away as paranoia or old house noises, until that thing hit the car. I wrote all of this down that same night at the hotel, but Lena and I never really talked about it again. I buried the memory. Until recently,